Hey, it's Kevin from KDW Mixing and Mastering here. In this video I'm going to show you a new toy that I have. It's called the Two Notes Torpedo Studio. So this box, you'll see in this photo, is a handy device to have in your studio if you have the need to or want to record guitars silently. You know, it gives you the advantage to record any time, night, day, especially if you're in a home studio, and you don't have to worry about loud noises. So the device itself, you can take your real amp head. So if you've got a head and cabinet, you can unplug the cabinet. You plug the amp head straight into the Torpedo Studio, and then you use the built-in cabinets and microphone setups and placements to get your sound without having to do real microphones and have a real cabinet going. Now you can do other features, like you can use it live. You can plug your cabinet in and have it pass through. One thing to note, if you do plug a cabinet in, it disables the load box. If you want to use this to drive your amp but keep your volume down, you can't do that with the studio. You need to get an attenuator to do that. But if you want to play silent without a cabinet, then you can plug your amp head in and drive it as hard as you like, because you're playing silently. You can use you can plug headphones directly in if you want to do that, just for practicing, and or you can plug it into your computer, into your DAW software to record, so you can do all your recording through that. You've got the ability to change mic placements, cabinets. You can even simulate a power amp. If you have a preamp set up without a power amp, you can simulate that in here as well. So with the Torpedo Studio, you can drive everything from the front panel. You don't need to use the software. It doesn't need to be plugged into a computer if you don't want to, but it's obviously a lot harder to drive, and there's a lot more power with the software. You can load additional cabinets, etc. So you are limited with the amount of cabinets on the Torpedo Studio at once. So if we go into the software here and we have a look at the memory manager, you'll see here that I've got 0 empty slots available, and I've got 50 cabinets placed on there. So you've got a mixture of guitar and bass cabinets. Obviously, if you find you don't want any of these certain cabinets, you can remove them. You can add additional, so these are the ones that are available to be added if you wish. But the device itself is limited to 50 onboard cabinets at a time. But you can have unlimited sitting on your computer, and you can drag them over and chop and change as you wish. You can also load some user-based ones, so if you want to go and buy some third-party impulse responses, you can do that, and then you can load those, and that'll give you an extra 128 slots available to you, but only if you get third-party ones. You can't load any more of the Two Notes ones. For some reason they become unavailable. So that's in the memory manager. So whatever cabinet you've loaded in here in the 50 is what you can then use without a computer plugged in with the studio directly. Okay, but if you want the ability to have more, then you need to have the software running and connected. Simple USB cable, nothing special about it. You've got a preset manager, setup manager, and there's a La Boutique, which you can go in here. So this is obviously if you've got internet connected, and you can go in here and you can order and pay for extra cabinets if you wish. So you can go through categories. You can try them out as well, so you don't have to buy them straight away. You can do a bit of a live demo and then try them out, and then decide if you want to purchase it or not. But we'll go out of there. We won't worry about that at the moment. So here's all your different sections. Here is your presets, which you can have on the Torpedo. You can have certain presets on the Torpedo, or you can have other ones on your computer. Obviously, if they're not on the Torpedo, then you can't use them if you are doing it standalone without your computer. So obviously if you're going to go play live or use it without a computer, then make sure you've got your presets set up here. Comes with some default presets. The new software they've got now has a different mode. It's called arcade mode, and if I switch to that, it basically changes the view of it a bit more, I guess, arcade like, and you have your settings here and that there. You do lose some features by going into this mode. So if you want the full amount of features, so basically they've simplified, so the power amp there, you can see it's off, cold or hot. So the settings that are available to you are quite simple in arcade mode. But if you want the full ability, then just go back to simulation mode, and this gives you the full power of everything. So you got your input level. Here's your power amp. If you wanted to turn the power amp on, you can simulate various different power amp tubes, and change some settings here. Change your type, pentode, triode. Then we've got our main miking section here. I'll come back to it in a second. We've got EQ, which we can change from a different guitar, bass, and it just changes the values in there. Parametric. You can expand it if you put it in parametric mode to get more ability to change things. Or back to guitar, you've got an exciter, you've got a compressor, and they just released some reverb settings here. So you've got different types of reverbs, some studios, basements, cathedrals, etc. And you'll see here it changes the picture as you change them, and you can adjust how much you want in there, and then there's your output level. Okay, so in the studio you have the ability, you have two miking setups. Okay, you have an A channel and a B channel, and you can do whatever you like with either of these. Each of those, as you'll see here, has a button, so you can have a power amp on one, no power amp on the other. You can turn the miking on, off, cabinet, reverb, exciter, EQ, and they're individual to each channel. So you can have different settings in all of these on each channel. You can change the pan position, the volume. So if you want to create a stereo effect instantly, you can do that with this. So you can pan one left, pan one right, and have a different cabinet in each one, or a different mic, or both, different settings, and create a true stereo guitar effect without having to record your guitar tracks twice, doubling. I still prefer to double myself. It just gives a bit more to it. So what I've been doing with some of my patches is actually creating just some basic single cabinet models. So if you look on my setup here, I've got on the A channel, I've got it panned in the center, okay, and I've got a vintage C, dynamic 57, and if I go to the B channel, I've got exactly the same cabinet, but I've picked a different mic. So the way I'm doing mine, and it's still panned center, so I'm keeping my guitar in this preset as a mono guitar track, not a stereo one, but I'm using it to create the dual miking technique. So with the same cabinet, all the same settings, just the difference that I'm making is with the different microphone and the position of the microphone. So when we look in here, so if we go into this one here, so we'll just look at the A channel. You can obviously filter different ones out here. You can even turn the miking off if you want to. Okay, but you've got your ability to pick any of the cabinets that are sitting on here, so you can change and pick whatever cabinet you want. You can even go to bass cabinets if you want to do bass. And then on top of that, you've got your different mics. So there's a selection of different mics here, a couple of bass mics, and pretty much all the standard microphones that you would expect to be using to mic up a guitar cabinet. And then with that, you have the ability to change the distance. So you can bring the mic back, closer, whatever you want, and you can change the position of it to the center of the speaker cone. So 0 would be right in the speaker center, and then you can take it out as far as you like. You also have the ability to flick this switch and put your microphone at the back of the cabinet. If that's an effect you want to go with, you can do that. You've got this setting here which is supposed to adapt or adjust the phase. So if you start to hear some funny phase issues, you can adjust that to do that. Overload, I think, is just to simulate the speaker overload or the microphone overload effect, one of the two. And you can also adjust the dry wet of the mic setup for this. Okay, and as I said, on the B channel you can have entirely different settings or exactly the same, whatever you want to do. In this one here, like I said, I'm simulating having one cabinet with a dual miking technique. Now if you look at some of their presets that they have, let's just pick something totally different. Okay, so an example of one of their presets here, which is totally different. If you look at the A channel, they've picked a Blonde 63 guitar cabinet, 2x12, dynamic 57 on there, pretty much center. Yeah, it is center. Distance is there. They got the compressor, EQ, exciter on, no reverb. Then if you go across the B channel, what they've got is this Kerosene with a 87 U87 condenser mic, and they've actually put it on the back of the cabinet. They've got a bit of distance and it's nowhere near the center of the speaker. A little bit of overload on there, and again they've got the compressors, exciter and stuff there. So, and they've got that panned left and right, so that should in theory give you a stereo effect. Now you've also got this volume here, so that'll give you a nice way to balance the levels of the two mics, because obviously depending on the cabinet you've picked and the mic you pick, you may get differences in sound levels. Well, you will, so you'll want to balance that nicely to get the right effect you want. And for instance, in the case of one of my presets where I'm doing the dual miking technique, you'll see here that I've got the volume here at -3 dB on the 57, and on the Roya 121 I've got it at -15 dB, so it's a lot lower. So the main mic in my setup is the SM57 with a touch of the ribbon, Roya 121, just to add a bit more fullness to it. You can obviously adjust that to your liking, set it up however you like. If we go into the settings manager, this is some other stuff that you can do here. You've got this fan control, you can turn on or off. I haven't really noticed the fan making any noise at all, but I'm not driving it too hard. This thing can take 100 to 150 watts, I think it is. So maybe if you had a 150 watt head on there, it might push it. I don't have an amp head anywhere near that large, so the fan's not doing a great deal. You've got some MIDI control here, so if you have a pedal board that you would like to be able to have that has the ability to do some MIDI control as well, and you want it to have it switch your presets on the Torpedo, you could do that. So you can plug in a MIDI cable and program it all up, and have it also, when you're changing your patches on your pedal board, you can have it changing the presets on the Torpedo, which is handy in a live situation. For the basic setup here, you've got your input where you want it to come from. So you've got various different types of inputs. You're not restricted to just the amp. Obviously I've got it set to amp, so that is purely the speaker cable coming out of my amp head, which would normally go to a real speaker cabinet, is going into the Torpedo, and I have it selected to amp. Okay, you can have obviously this amp plus line level, so you can have some line inputs. You can have the SPDIF, AES, so if you need to input different things here. Output modes, so you've got a stereo mode here, so if you want to do the stereo guitar effect, you can do that, so that'll output obviously 2 channels to your DAW, or you can pick one of these dry dual miking techniques here, which is backwards or forwards there. So I've got it set to dual miking dry, and what that means is if I switch over to my console one here, I have two channels on here, and I have a torpedo wet and a torpedo dry. Torpedo dry. So torpedo dry is it's not dry. It's not like a DI. So if you still want a DI, you need to have an external DI box as well in front of it to create a truly DI guitar. But what this is, it's a dry from the it's dry from the torpedo, which means that it's the direct signal from your amp. So whatever you're doing on your amp head, if you've got pedals running through it, distortion, whatever else you've cranked it, whatever else it will be, that will be coming out on the dry. But what it will be missing is what the torpedo does. So it'll be missing all this cabinets, all the miking, all the effects, any power, anything like that. It'll be 100% dry. All of that stuff taken out. So the reason they do that is what they are talking about is not for reamping or anything like that, but what they're calling remiking. So because it's dry, it's your amp dry, you then have the ability to either feed it back out to your Torpedo Studio, then play with different microphones and things like that. What you can do, because you don't need to feed it back out to the studio, there's no actual audio benefit to feed it out back to the studio. But what you can do is if you've recorded the dry signal into your DAW software as well as the wet, and you're not happy with the wet signal, you want to make some adjustments, you can actually load up their plugin, which if you've bought the Torpedo Studio you get for free. It's called the Two Notes Wall of Sound 3, I think it's called. And it's just a plugin, and it looks pretty much the same as this. So you can then load that plugin in your DAW software and play with all the mics and that on that dry signal and do basically what this studio is doing now live, but it has the ability to adjust it after the effect. So that can be very handy. So in a perfect situation, what you would have is a similar setup where I have here, where I actually have a DI. So I have my guitar going through my pedal board and everything, and before all of that, I have my guitar going through a DI box, and that gets fed to this microphone channel here, and that'll record my guitar dry. So that is really my guitar dry, right? Nothing on it, no pedals, no amp, no nothing, just straight out of my guitar. So that would give me the ability, if I really needed to change everything, to either feed that back out and reamp it, or load up some virtual amplifier plugins to sort of reamp that way. Then on top of that, I've obviously got my full Torpedo wet track that I'm recording. So if the sound I picked when I recorded I'm happy with, then obviously that's what I would go with. That's the perfect setup that I placed on. Then I could have a recording of the Torpedo dry. These are all recorded exactly the same time, one pass, one play, and I would have the Torpedo dry here, which would be my amp. At the settings I have on my amp, any of the pedals that I'm using on the amp would be recorded as well. All that wouldn't be recorded is the Torpedo cabinet and miking simulator. So if I like the sound of the amp and I'm happy with all the effects and everything, I'm just not quite sure of the cabinet or the mics, then I could use this recorded track and load up the plugin, the Wall of Sound plugin, and make changes and get a different sound out of it. Alright, so that gives you ultimate solutions, but it can also cause ultimate confusion in the mixing stage where you just don't know what to pick. I like to lock in the sound I have that I want straight away, and that doesn't cause any confusion then, but having these other ones recorded just in case can be a good idea. Alright, so the main thing here is obviously to listen to it. So I've just got my amp, I've got it turned up about halfway just to get a bit of the tube sound. I've got some tubes there in it, so I just want to get some warmth out of those tubes, drive them a bit. As I said, I've got the amp plugged straight in. I've just got a Strat style guitar with a humbucker on it, and I've just got it set to a sort of a clean sound at the moment. And so basically it sounds like this at the moment. If we go on the neck pickup, So that's what it sounds like with my little patch there. So this is where it all comes together, right? So let's say we don't like that and we want to pull up another patch. So here's another patch I created. Same thing. I'm just creating a dual miking technique with a SM57 and a Roya 121. But this time I'm using a Fender deluxe style cabinet, and I don't have any EQ or exciter on this one. A little bit of compression just to keep it under control. Just sounds like that. You can go to a different style here, which is just a different style of Fender. And if you want to go through some of their patches, you know, go to a clean there. And when you're setting it up, if you want to try something out, you can actually mute each one channel at a time just to listen to the effects. So look, if I mute that one, now you're just hearing this one here, which is actually set to be on the back. So like, or you could mute it the other way. So there's quite a few ideas here of plugins. You might want to go for a vintage. Just keep in mind the range of sounds that I'm getting out of this guitar at the moment. I'm not doing nothing with the guitar or the amp. I am purely just changing the preset on the Torpedo Studio. So all it's doing is changing the cabinets and the mics and these little effects over here. That's all it's doing. It's the same amp on exactly the same settings with the same guitar on the same setting. So let's switch over to a dirty sound, and let's have a look at some sort of crunchy sounds. The difference in sounds on the crunch and the high gains is massive, you know, and again, it is just changing the cabinets and the microphones. So I've just gone over to one of my patches, just a simple one, because I just want to try. So I'm going to mute the B microphone, which is the ribbon, and let's just have a play with the SM57 just to show you what you can sort of do, right? So at this moment, what the SM57 sounds like. If I put it on the back. So what you might want to do is change the let's put the distance to 0, and let's have a play with both. So I put the microphone at center, so we get this sound now. So let's try changing the distance. How much of the room comes into play then when you move the distance away. And then we bring it back. So that'll be right on the grill. You might want to leave a little bit of air. Alright, but let's put it straight on the grill. So let's try the center position now. So at the moment we're obviously center on the cone, so it's quite bright. You might want to move it out a little bit. Instantly it gets a bit thicker, less brittle on the top. So the overload there would sort of... So you can hear what that sort of does. That's a nasty sort of distortion there. So the compressor... adding a bit of volume because I've got the makeup gain on, but you can see there it's getting a little bit, so you know I could it's going to compress quite heavily there. You can turn the ratio up. You get a fair bit of sustain on that with that setting like that, or we can turn it off. We got our exciter. And then we've got the EQ, which is, yeah, obviously you can change any setting you want on the EQ. I'm not going to go through that. Let's have a look at the reverb. So we got 100% wet. What Studio A sounds like. Studio B. Obviously I wouldn't have it set to 100% wet, but just to give you an idea of the sounds. And then you got a custom setting. Obviously you can set the size, the echo, the color, whatever you want. Fully adjustable. Alright, so you know, obviously 100% is quite much, you know, you might... Let's pick a bigger one. Let's go for a cathedral. So you can hear that sitting in the background there. You know, that's still a lot of reverb. If you added the distance of the mic in there, you get some really unusual effects if you wish to. So that's the basic overview of that. It's a bit hard to test the power amp because I've got a power amp in there, but I guess to give an idea. Alright, so as one last thing, let's just crank it to a high gain. Alright, so we got a bit high gain now. Alright, let's get a nice... so let's pick a... let's say, so you go for a metal patch, let's say. Oh, that one is nasty. Let's try a lead. Oh, California metal. Oh, if you want to go a lead one. But you might want to make your own from scratch, which obviously you can do. So for instance, let's go with, just to give you an idea, let's go with my technique here of the single cabinet. So I've just loaded up my presets here, but this is obviously got a British vintage, which is a Marshall. Alright, so what I would do to build this is I would mute one channel first and just start with the A. Let's say I'm happy with a SM57. I've got about 5% off the center just at the moment, bit of 8% distance, give it a little bit of air. So we obviously want a 4x12. Okay, so we've got different ones here. That little symbol there is showing the shop. This is a new version of software. So you might want to go, now the book sort of gives you an idea of what these actually are, the real models are supposed to be. Obviously they've used slightly cryptic terms to try and avoid some copyright issues. But you know, angle and angle are pretty close. So you might want to go through and just experiment with some of these cabinets to find the one that you think sounds really good. And that one sounds pretty good actually, I don't mind that one. Or you might try and do, I think C is closed back and O I think is open back. Closed back was better. What else have we got? Free rock. So you've got lots of options here, obviously. And I just noticed this symbol here, so that's in the shop. That symbol here means I've got it on the computer, but it is not in the, it's not loaded at the moment in the studio. So it can load it, and we can listen to it. This is obviously a Randall. So you can experiment with some lots. So if you've got a lot of cabinets, you bought some extra ones from the boutique store, you can have them in your computer and you can try them out. And then when you're happy with them and you've got the ones you like, you can obviously remove the cabinets you don't like from the studio or not using from the studio, just having them on the computer, and then load these ones in. So if I said I like this one, I would then want to add that in the memory manager to one of the slots on the studio to keep on there all the time. But for instance, let's go back. I sort of like the California C. So we're just working on the one here, so obviously you can adjust your EQ if you want to do some settings, and I can play with that. Set up your compressor if you wanted to add an exciter, do that. And then I would start playing with the placement of the mic and the distance, so that you might say, okay, let's listen to it at center. Might move it out a bit. You might say that's too much. Okay, so you might say, yep, I like that. Now let's try the distance. You notice there, hear the difference between the two. When it's right on the grill, it even simulates a bit of that proximity effect where you're getting the extra bass from the proximity effect. All right, so you then you just move it out a bit. Cleans up a bit of that low end. So if you don't want that low end, or if you really want that thumping low end, then you bring it in. So once I've got that set up, get my volume sort of passed through it, right, and then you got your pan level. Then what you might do is you might mute the A channel and unmute the B channel. And then you go through the same thing. And obviously I've got this set at lower volume. And we might say, you might pick a different cabinet, or you might say, you know what, I want to go with the same cabinet. I'm just going to do dual miking. And you go through and go, oh, I reckon I want to add this mic. You know what, you might say, I want to go for an SM57 and a 421 combo dual mic. You might say I like that combo, crank the volume because it's too low. Again, play with your placement, and let's just say we like that placement there. I'm happy with that. Then you can listen for the combination. And you might say that the SM57 is my main mic again, so I'm going to just reduce that for the moment. Until you get your levels right and you're happy with the sound that you're getting. So, good way to do that. Let's do the ribbon one because that's obviously a darker tone. Alright, so. See how thicker that gets, but you might say that's too much. Alright, that's my walkthrough of the Torpedo Studio. Obviously there's a lot you can do with this, a lot of power, massive amount of options with cabinets, and like I said, if you get into the third party impulse responses and start buying those or downloading free ones, the possibilities are almost endless with this. And obviously then, you can have multiple amp heads in your studio as well, so then you've got those options as well. If you've only got one amp studio, if you've only got one amp head, then that's fine, but you can hear how much difference you can get in sound even with that one amp head just by playing with the cabinets and the mics. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun. It's an extremely expensive box, so it's a serious investment if it's something that you really want and think you can use, especially if you're very into recording guitars and you're really struggling to get the sound you want because you can't have your amp cranked when you want to record, or you just don't have a nice sounding room to record in, and it's just making the recording sound terrible when you mic up a cabinet. This is a really good way to do it. That's assuming you want to use a real amp head and everything else. Obviously you can go the full-on virtual amping plug-in solution if you like. I personally prefer it this way because I've got a real amp head, and with the Apollo, UAD Apollo there as well, when I'm playing I'm getting absolutely no latency because I'm hearing it direct from the Apollo, and that's getting it direct from the amp through the Torpedo Studio, which is adding, I'm guessing it's adding some latency, but it's unnoticeable to me. I can't pick the latency. Whereas I have tried some virtual plugins. You know, if you use the UAD virtual plugins, then you can obviously use them latency free by running them in unison mode. But if you don't want to use them, you want to use something like Positive Grid or something like that. As much as they sound great with the Apollo, I find the latency is too great, and I can't use them. It just doesn't sound right to me, but that's me. Maybe it's just a UAD Apollo problem as well, because I've got the Firewire version, not Thunderbolt. Maybe if you had a better audio interface that had a lot less latency, it mightn't be a problem. But this is a great solution if you've got an amp head that you really like, and you just want to get that extra power of being able to play with lots and lots of cabinets and mics and mic positions and stuff like that, and being able to crank your amp loud to drive those tubes but still be silent in the room. This is a great solution. So hopefully it's been useful to you, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.